Saab at the top level of management, I think, has two people that together combine all of these attributes, and I'd like to introduce half of those people to come up, someone who has the enthusiasm and has the foresight and the vision and the ability to know every little detail of what makes this company work. I'd like to introduce Jan-Åke Jonsson. And if I may, I'd like to thank Peter Beckstrom for the Swedish language instructions. I hope it came off.
It was perfect.
Thank you.
All right, can you hear me okay? Yeah? Very good. Well, first of all, thank you very much. And we're, of course, all delighted to be here. This is an event that I must say so far has impressed me significantly, not only what you have on display out there, but also the level of enthusiasm among all of you, I have to say, very, very impressive. And I must admit that from my side, you know, we're very, very happy to be here, and I know all the people from the company feel the same way. What I was going to do was to talk a little bit, I think, about the direction that we're taking in the company. And, you know, some of it might be a little bit boring, but I would say, on the other hand, it's important that you as our ambassadors are fully in tune with the direction we're taking, and hopefully will continue to endorse our plans and our activities. You know, 40 years ago, which is a long, long, long time, I had just got my driver's license. And then many of you might say, gee, you know, this is a very, very old guy. But then, of course, you don't know that in Sweden you can get your license when you're 9 years old. Anyway, 40 years ago, as an owner of a driver's license and about $250 in my pocket, I had to make the very important decision to buy a car. And at that time in Sweden, you had basically three options if you wanted to buy a car, and if you were a young guy like I was. And that was, you could buy a Saab, you could buy a Volvo, or you could buy a Beetle, a VW. Those were the three. If you picked a Ford or something, you were like lost, right? That was like the worst you could do, right? So I had these three to choose from. And at the end, I bought a Saab. I bought a Saab 96, model year 64. First four-speed gearbox, you know, freewheel and all the other goodies that you had on those models. And of course, it was not new. $250 didn't take me that far, but it was a fantastic car. I bought it from two ladies that actually had bought it brand new, but they found this car to be so boring in terms of the instrumentation that they decided to paint this car, the dashboard, pink. And you can imagine, when I invited my friends and had a dashboard that was pink, all the, you know, amusing comments I got from that, I think is not appropriate for this very distinct audience. But anyway, what I would like to say is that little did I know, of course, that I would be standing here about almost exactly 40 years later to be the head of Saab and to talk to you about what has happened in the last 2 years, I would say, and the bright future we have ahead of us. It's, of course, a tremendous privilege for me to do that. You can just imagine what would have happened and what kind of language I would have used if I had selected a Volvo. But that is another story, I would say, that we'll, I'm sure, learn more about. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so what I would like to talk about is give you a little bit of insight, I would say, what happened over the last couple of years, but in very, very short terms. But more importantly, I would say, talk about the future and the direction of the company. I would say that the 23rd of February was, of course, a fantastic day for us. That was the day when Spyker Cars and General Motors signed the agreement to close the transaction and purchase Saab. It was also the time when we signed an agreement with the European Investment Bank and the Swedish government as it relates to funding of our business going forward. And we left basically that day with a new owner, but also a fully funded business plan. When Victor and I came to Trollhättan that day, we drove into the main gate, and Victor asked me, because he saw that the Swedish flag was at full mast. And he said, you know, what's the occasion? Or what's happening in Sweden this day? And I honestly said to him, I don't know. I don't think we have a holiday or anything. I'm not aware of anything. So what we did was that when we went to the canteen for lunch, we walked by the flag, and we have a little sign that actually explains what's the purpose. And when Victor and I walked up to there and we read what was on the sign, it was pretty amazing. It says, day one. And I would say that really shows the spirit of the organization after this drama that we have gone through over the last, I would say, 2 years at this point. And of course, I would say that the support that we have received from throughout the world, where also you have played a key part of that, has been tremendous for us. It has not only, I would say, had an impact on decision makers in many different organizations, but it has, more importantly, I would say, kept the spirit at a very, very high level during this period of time. As you know, we're probably one of the companies that have gone through everything there possibly can be in terms of the company and difficulties, whether you talk about downsizing, reprioritizing, liquidation, reconstruction, you name it, we have done it all. And I would say, without this support that we have experienced from, call it this informal club throughout the world that has a soft spot for Saab in their heart, without that, I would say we wouldn't be where we are today. And we're very, very appreciative of that. From that point on, the 23rd of February, of course, we restarted the business. And some of you might say, yeah, that's not a big deal to put a new organization in place and get going and start selling cars like we've done historically. But when we went through the plant during that time, this is what you could experience. This is how the plant actually looked like. It was totally empty because during 7 weeks, we were in liquidation, a decision that General Motors made as it relates to our overall business. We had no material. We stopped a lot of the product development, no activities in the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. So we started basically the business with an empty plant. And what has happened over the last 5 months is, of course, that we're happy that we now, during 3.5, 4 months, have been building cars. And it might sound like, yeah, it's just to get started. But then you have to remember that on the new 9.5, as an example, we have 828 suppliers of components into the 9.5. And they all have to get restarted. They have to restart their business, start delivering to us, etc. And in conjunction with that, for the 9.5, we had to restart all the development work, finish off the vehicle to get such a fantastic car that you've seen out here. And on top of that, to start the separation from General Motors, to create this independent company. And that might also seem as a little issue, right? You just draw a new org chart and then you're in business. We have 23 countries where General Motors is responsible for the sales of our cars, the US being one, Canada being another. We had to separate from all of these organizations and markets and build up our own entity, like we have done here in the US, like we will do in the middle of August as it relates to Canada. But we have done that everywhere else in the world in these 23 markets. A massive effort from the organization. And I could go on and talk about all of these fantastic activities that have now created a factory that is full of cars, full of activity, and we're cranking out cars as we speak, and I would say the employees deserve a lot of credit for that. The question is, of course, what will happen now? I mean, if we look at the future of Saab, what are the key activities? Well, first of all, we need to continue what we're doing. We need to separate from General Motors and create this independent company that I was talking about, which is what I would say not only our customers, our dealers, our partners, but also our employees are really looking forward to. We need to continue in that direction to build up an organization and a capability that can really deliver on this fantastic brand that we have. But if you look at the more strategic activities, how are we going to run the company? Well, first of all, it is our intent to concentrate all of our activities to Trollhättan in Sweden. In other words, product development, manufacturing, sales and marketing, management, and other staff functions will be focused into Trollhättan. And that's where we will build up the skills, the competence, the capacity to actually run the company. Manufacturing-wise, we will build everything except the 94X that we will build in Mexico in a GM facility as we have originally planned. And I can tell you there are many, many good business reasons from a Saab point of view to continue on that in that direction. But after that, everything else will be built in Sweden. We will also continue our efforts to develop cooperations with various kind of business partners. It's interesting to see that during this relatively tough period over the last 2 years, a lot of companies, small suppliers to big OEMs, have really showed an interest to work together with Saab. And we're in the middle of negotiating some pretty, I would say, impressive deals that you will see benefiting Saab as we go into the future. We've already signed agreements with a design organization to design, in particular, the new 9.3, which I can tell you will be a stunning vehicle. But also have we signed agreements as it relates to the development of a test fleet of electrical cars, which is something that is, of course, for the future, but very important to us to learn from this test fleet so we can develop serial production as we go along. So developing relationships with new partners that fit Saab is something that you're also going to see. The second part of our strategy is, of course, the brand. How do we take this brand into the future? And what I'd like to do is to show you a little film.
Saab kommer. Saab 93, den svenska bilen med flygkvalitet. Saab kommer. Se på den nya hela vindrutan. Karossen är pressad av kraftig stålplåt och helsvetsad. Saab kommer. Se på den stilrena inredningen med höj- och sänkbart baksäte och på de bekväma stolarna och den välutrustade instrumentbrädan. Saab kommer. Se på underredsbehandlingen som sker direkt på fabriken. Saab kommer till er. med den hela nya vindrutan. Ni kan också få den med automatkoppling, alltså utan kopplingspedal. Och ni kan få den i flera läckra färger. Och ni kan på 2-3 minuter förvandla er Saab till en bekväm sovplats för hela familjen. Saab 93, den svenska familjebilen med flygkvalitet.
I think that this is a fantastic film. You can look, of course, at many different aspects of this, but I would say the funniest part, I think, is when they talk about several different colors and they show everything in black and white. But I guess that was the technology that was available at that time. But why I'm showing you this film is as it relates to the brand as such. I think during this period we've gone through, we have learned really to understand that we have a tremendous heritage. We have a history in this brand that is unique when you compare it to many of our competitors, and something that we really need to use as we go into the future. We feel also that we have a very relevant brand, and if we can take this heritage into the future and apply the Swedish values that are so inherent in today's society, we think we have an excellent opportunity. As you heard earlier today, Victor Muller and myself had the opportunity to participate in the Mil Miglia, which for me was the first experience of a car race like that, and went beyond my imagination, I would say. But we also learned there also the value of the Saab brand. Here we have two-stroke Saab 93s from 1957 competing with the Aston Martins, the Ferraris, the Maseratis, the Mercedes, all the top of the line premium vehicles. And here comes these two little two-stroke engines poking along there and competing really with these cars. Another, I would say, statement of this fantastic brand that we need to develop and need to make it into this unique brand that we're so proud of. I would say that a lot of debates have been going on about who won the race between Victor and myself. And I, of course, have this opportunity to tell you the story straight up, right, without interference from Victor. So, and I mean, my story is very simple. You just look at the scoreboard, and then you can see who was at the top, right, which was, of course, myself. You will later on hear Victor's version, which will probably take about 30 minutes to explain. Anyway, this fantastic brand is, of course, a key of our strategy as we go into the future. But I would say also that last but not least, the new cars. We're launching the 9.5 sedan as we speak. After the vacation, the model year 11 9.3s will be in the marketplace with a lot of news happening throughout the model year. In April of next year, the 9.4X, our first entry into the crossover vehicle segment, will be in the marketplace. And in the middle of 2011, the 9.5 Sport Combi, the wagon version of the 9.5, will be starting its production. And then in 2012, the new 9.3 will hit the market, which is, of course, a key launch for us. So that's really when we need to prove how the new company is going to operate. But I would say it's also activities with new cars that actually is going to take us as a permanent member into the European premium segment. We're developing cars to compete directly with the Audis, with the BMWs, etc. And that's where we belong, and that's where we will be very competitive. A lot of discussions have been going on, of course, regarding a smaller vehicle, a Saab 92, a Saab 91, or whatever nomenclature we want to use. We're at it. We're working on defining what the requirements are, dimensions, what architectures we could use, etc. We don't have it in our plan yet, but rest assured that we're working on it. I would say at the same time the chairman of the company is breathing down my neck to get this car into the portfolio and into our business plan. So rest assured that you know what my priorities are as it relates to that car. If we then look at the company and on an overall perspective, it is, of course, our ambition to make a profitable and a sustainable business out of this. Our ambitions are to be around 125,000 unit company with a break-even level at 85,000, meaning that we can make good money with volumes that we're used to. If we happen to sell a few more, hey, we're not going to be sorry about that, of course. But we're happy if we reach the 125,000. The good thing that we're in at this point is we have a fully funded business plan. We have new cars around the corner. We have a fantastic, relevant brand. And we have a little bit of a safety net from General Motors with access to technology that we might need in the future if we so decide. At the same time, we're independent. We're standalone. We make the decisions. We make the priorities. We decide what technology to use. A fantastic situation that will lead us to a very successful company, I would say. Last but not least, I would like to also ask you, as I've heard many of you making comments about the new 9.5, the best you could do for Saab in the near future is to go into a dealership and buy a new car. But most of all, keep doing what you're doing, keep supporting us, and then I'm sure that we jointly are going to take this successful brand's heritage into the future and really show those who are a little bit questioning that Saab is here to say Saab is going to be a very successful company. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And that's really an applaud for all of our employees, our dealers, and all the Saab customers that are really supporting us. What I now have the opportunity is, of course, to introduce the next speaker. I'll do it for you because it is, my privilege to standing up here, and you might come up and add a few comments if you wish. But Victor Muller and I met on the 30th of November last year for the first time in Detroit at the Marriott in the Renaissance Center. And we have since that time worked, of course, very closely together and had a lot of fun, but a lot of work over the last several months, I would say, but it has been extremely enjoyable. And Victor has brought, of course, not only a lot of automotive experience into the company, but also enthusiasm, a belief in the brand, and has really been motivating us to, even in the toughest times, actually find a solution to the various issues we have dealt with. His wife is jealous because I spend more time with him than she is. But that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be, I think. But anyway, and you'll probably later on also hear the story from Victor, how he thinks he won the Mil Miglia. But rest assured that, look at the scoreboard. Thank you very much, Victor.
As you can imagine, we have a lot of fun. I tell you that. There's some very funny people in this room too. And let me tell you, when I was born, was actually on the day that Jan-Åke got his driver's license when he was 9. And this is what I heard. That's what I heard. And today I got a frog. I don't know what the relationship is between Saab and a frog. But I got a frog. And the frog made the sound of a two-stroke Saab, which must have been almost the first thing I heard when I saw light in this world, because I happened to be living in a block in the south of Amsterdam, where in those days it was very common that large car companies were right smack in the city of Amsterdam. And in that block was the importer of Saab. And so when I looked down of my bedroom window down to the center of the block, and these were sort of like Kensington, Amsterdam, really nice houses. And you look down and you would see the Saab 92s, 93s, 95s coming in and out. And my father had an auditing company, an accountant's firm, and the young accountants all drove Saab. So when my mother didn't have time, because she worked with my father in the firm, when she didn't have time to take me somewhere, to the zoo probably, she would ask one of the guys, take the little boy and bring him to the zoo, and I would be sitting in the back of a Saab 96. And when you go through hell, like Jan-Åke and myself did, it was truly hell. You wonder why you keep on going, right? Well, I'll tell you two things why we kept on going. The first is you. We kept on going because of you. The incredible support that we got from Saab owners, Saab clubs, Saabs United worldwide it's unbelievable. I don't think there is any brand anywhere in the world that can pride itself for being saved by those who bought it, right? Bought the product. I mean, it's unbelievable. You did it. And last week, Jan-Åke and myself had the privilege of hosting 800 people at the Saab Festival in Trollhättan. It was stunning. And again, there we had the privilege of meeting so many that actually went into the streets and said, save Saab. And it was actually a Dutch initiative, these Saab convoys. We had nothing to do with that. This just happened all by itself. And Saabs United picked it up. Now, can you imagine that a guy who lives in bloody Tasmania, right? You can't get any further away from Sweden than Tasmania, right? The moon is farther away. This guy, on his own, managed to mobilize an entire world population of Saab owners to rally in our favor. And I can assure you that he has been, Stephen Swade, as he's been called, has been one of the most avid supporters of the acquisition of Saab, the survival of Saab. And last week, we honored him in a very appropriate way. A month ago, he came to the factory and he gave Jan-Åke a boomerang, very appropriate from a guy from down under. And the wonderful thing about boomerangs is that they keep on coming back. So we designed a prize, an award for him, in which we nailed his own boomerang to a piece of wood, to a plinth, and put a little model of a 92 on it, of the Saab. And we gave that to him, and we instituted the Saabs United Award, that every convention, every Saab festival actually, we're going to give that award to the person or the organization that has supported our brand most in the past 2 years, because it's a biannual event. The most supportive person or organization that has done something for the brand to help us moving forward. And the first person, of course, to take the award was Stephen Wade himself. And he was very much moved. But it comes to show what Saab is all about. Nothing prepared us for that. I'm sure even you must have been surprised by what happened in this incredibly tough period with the brand and how it managed to survive. And the question, of course, arises, how did it all happen? How could this happen? Jan-Åke explained, this company's gone through every conceivable legal hurdle. How could this happen? Jan-Åke explained, this company's gone through every conceivable legal hurdle that mankind has ever created. And still it's here. the company that wouldn't die. And why did it get into that position, right? It is what we have referred to as the perfect storm. This unique situation that a financial crisis moves into the car industry like it's going out of fashion. It's really hitting the industry hard. And the largest car manufacturer in the world, General Motors, gets into the most difficult situation it's ever been in. And in order to survive, the company can do one thing only, and it's put its fingers into the most holy of all holy grails, your taxpayer money. And in order to get that money, it has to reorganize itself. So it has to shed a number of brands. Exit Pontiac, Saturn, Hummer, and Saab. Well, you know, the rest is history now. Hummer didn't make it, Saturn didn't make it, Pontiac didn't make it. I didn't see anybody rallying for those. And Saab barely made it. It was a very narrow escape. But that perfect storm caused something that was absolutely unprecedented in this industry. It caused a minute manufacturer from the Netherlands to be able to acquire a company, a 63-year-old iconic car manufacturer, for the price of the wind tunnel. Now, how can that be? It's true. We got the rest for free. We got the 9.5. We got the 9.5 for free. We got the 9.4X for free. We got the brand for free. We got everything else for free. Slight detail is they put it into liquidation. We had to resurrect it. But other than that, it was fine. And of course, it was a very, very difficult process that we went through. And I'm sure that you as Saab lovers, Saab enthusiasts have been following it from nearby. But I can tell you that one day, when Jan-Åke, who's going to retire way ahead of me, when Jan-Åke and myself are going to write up this story, the real story will surprise you even more. Because what happened in that period was just, I mean, life beats fiction, I tell you that. But anyway, it happened. And since then, management has, in an incredible way, put the company back onto its feet. Now, it would be extremely presumptuous for Spyker, with 100 employees making 50 cars a year, to say, well, you know what? We're going to run Saab, right? That's definitely not going to happen. And the wonderful thing about Saab is Saab had fantastic management in place. In spite of whatever happened to it, in spite of GM running that show in its own way, there's a lot of negative things being said by GM. And it's a bit easy, because without GM, ladies and gentlemen, there would be no Saab. Maybe they didn't shepherd the company in the way that we would have all liked to have seen, but truly, they spend a tremendous amount of money on that company. If you look at the infrastructure that was given to us for free, basically, they spent like 750 million euros, about $1 billion in that infrastructure in the past 10 years. The weird thing is that they put the money in the infrastructure, but 13-year-old 9.5s were coming down the production line, right? There was a slight disconnect there. But it's not like they didn't see that. I mean, they saw that. As recent as 2005, GM absolutely allowed and acknowledged that Saab needed to get some of its brand DNA back, and it instructed Jan-Åke and his team to create the new Aero X, that then fantastic prototype that set the new standard for Saab design. The Saab 9.5 and the 9.4X are direct descendants of the Aero X. And so it is sad, in a way, that the company that put the company where it is today, in fact, can no longer take the fruits of that. On the other hand, what a great opportunity for us. But you have to bear in mind that in this period, of which we're only a newcomer, I only got into this game on the 25th of November when I was sitting in the offices of my partner in London. He said, "Did you see that? Koenigsegg deal fell through. Saab is going to be liquidated." I said, you can't be serious. That's never going to happen. And he said, well, is this something we should look at? And we hadn't. So far we hadn't, because we were right in the middle of an acquisition when Saab came onto the market of Braun GP, the former Honda Formula One team that later on in the year became the world champion Formula One. Actually, we were pushed out of the race to acquire Braun GP by Mercedes. Now, most of you don't know about the relationship between the Dutch and the Germans, but it's not very good. And to be beaten by the Germans is a traumatic experience. I just have to remember 1974, I was a kid, when we were beaten by the Germans in the World Championship football, soccer, very bad moments, very bad memories. It happened again this year, now by the Spaniards. We had been at war with them for 80 years, in the past. We beat them then, now we lose, it's very sad. But in any event, beaten by the Germans is truly something traumatic. But in this particular case, we thanked Mercedes for buying Braun GP because we had our hands free, and here comes Saab on the market. And I was with my partner, and I said, the longest that Bob Lutz ever took to reply to any of my emails was 13 minutes. But I guess when I'm sending an email right now, he'll be quicker. And I wasn't joking. 8 minutes later, I got an email from Bob Lutz saying, hey, Vic, great that you're interested. Let me put you in touch with the guys from Deutsche Bank. They're our sales agents, and good luck. That was good. So next thing you know, I'm traveling to Detroit to put in my first very bare-bone basic offer on Saab. We just had been receiving just a little bit of paper to form our first bid on. And in the context of putting that bid in, maybe it was not such a bad idea to meet the CEO, right? So Jan-Åke happened to be in Detroit for a very important board meeting, which was supposed to take place on the 1st of December, the meeting that actually caused Ed Whittaker to take the helm and Henderson, Fritz, to be ousted from GM. And we met, and I can tell you one thing, we hit it off from the start. From the moment that we met, we had tremendous trust in each other, and I can tell you that there's a few things that caused this transaction to be successful. One was you. The second one was GM being in distress, clearly. But the third one was the fact that Jan-Åke and myself just hit it off, because there were at least 10 moments in time that we could have walked away laughing. It was so difficult, it was so terrible, this transaction, so incredibly nasty, that it would have been so easy to walk away and say, well, just this is not for us. We'll let it go. But I made a commitment. I made a very, very intense commitment, and so did Jan-Åke, to me, vice versa, that we would see it through whatever the cost. And we did that. And I can tell you, that man is the real hero. Jan-Åke, stand up. That man was the captain of Saab that didn't abandon ship. He stayed on board, and as a result, nobody in the management team left the company. Nobody. They all stayed. And as a result of that, there was something to acquire. I mean, you cannot buy a 3,500 people business and there's no management. How could we run that? Impossible. What could we bring to the table in that sense? He stayed the course, and in spite of all the adversities, he didn't leave. He didn't leave, so nobody else left. And that is one of the reasons why we could buy Saab and why we're here today. It's an incredible achievement of which we cannot praise him, for which we can't praise him enough. So next thing you know, on the 1st of December, I'm being called by Deutsche Bank. And they say, this guy says, I have interesting news for you. You're looking at a very hot Christmas. I said, well, that's interesting. Yes, you've been selected to pursue your bid for Saab, but you're a public company, right? I said, yeah, Spyker's a public company. Well, I have to tell you something about this Saab deal. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, there are more leaks in this case than in the men's room during Oktoberfest. Well, he wasn't lying, I tell you that. 2 days later, we already had to issue a press release confirming that indeed we were in the process of bidding for Saab, something that under normal SEC rules in Holland you didn't have to do at all, because we're just scratching the surface of a deal. But no, he wasn't lying, and it was going to get much worse before it was going to get better. In any event, from that moment on, we had a very positive and productive negotiation with GM until the 17th of December, when we were extremely close to signing. Actually, we're ready to go and sign everything on the 18th of December in Stockholm. We're all prepared to go. When I was called on the evening of the 17th by my counterpart in GM, and he said, we've hit a massive roadblock. This deal can't happen. I said, what is it? Well, there is a problem with your partner. Okay, so what is it? Well, we can't tell you. But it's really bad. Well, that was very helpful. Next day, we went to Stockholm, Jan-Åke, myself, my partner, Vladimir Antonov, a 35-year-old banker, extremely nice guy, clean as a whistle, never hurt a fly. And, 35, how much damage can you do, right? But anyway, we went to Stockholm, and we met with the GM guys, and they said, listen, done deal. It's not going to happen. We put the company into liquidation. So the second time, within 1 month, Jan-Åke had to go back to Trollhättan and confront the employees and tell them, we're dead. And I must say, it was the blackest day in the relatively short period of time that I was involved in the acquisition. Of course, Jan-Åke had many black days, but not as black as this one, for sure. This was the blackest day, because this seemed like the coup de grace, like the final blow. And when we flew back from Stockholm back to London with my partner in his jet, and we sat there and we were just basically speechless. We just didn't know what to say. We were completely blown to pieces. We just didn't know how to deal with this. And I said to him, listen, we just need to get a good night's sleep. Let's think about this, and tomorrow there will be another day. So the next morning when I woke up, I called him up and I said, listen, there's only one way to go about this. There will be no time to convince GM that you're fine, that you're okay. We just won't have time to do that, because by the time we have that done, Saab will be, one big tennis court. Right? There's nothing left in this factory. And he said, okay, what do you propose? I said, well, if I buy you out, we can do it. So that very Saturday, the 19th, I submitted a new bid to GM based on 11 points, and I put in there, not knowing at the time how important that was going to be, but I put in there that I wanted all 218 Saab dealers in the United States to be part and parcel of the transaction. And that was, in hindsight, a stroke of genius, because all of a sudden we had generated tremendous support from the dealer body in our battle over Saab. And of course, as you all well know, because you are Americans, battles with America are never won on foreign soil. They're always won here, and or not won, at least they're fought here. And by doing that, we managed to bring the war over Saab to Detroit, to the front steps of the building of the Renaissance Center. And that is why we got Saab in the end, because it was so unattractive not to sell it to us, so much more unattractive not to sell it to us than to sell it to us, that's why we got it in the end. But it was a very close call. In any event, by the middle of January, things looked extremely bleak, and we had to push like crazy. And on the 7th of January, actually, we had put in a modified second bid, which of course was hinging on the thought that I would buy my partner out. So we were doing 4 transactions at the same time. We're buying Saab from GM. That was not easy. We were getting the EIB loan, a $550 million loan. That was like virtually impossible. But to top it all off, we had to get a guarantee from the Swedish government securing that $550 million loan. Well, that was like virtually impossible. But to complicate matters further, I had to buy my partner out and refinance the entire Spyker group at the same time, where we're just 4 guys trying to make this deal happen. So it was working 20 hours a day, 90 days solid to get it done. But guess what? Nobody cares about that anymore, because on the 26th of January, we signed the deal. We got it done. And we could barely speak. We could honestly barely speak. Let me put my frog away so I can... Okay, that's interesting. Oops. Okay. And we go now to, I would hope, next slide. Yes, this is it. So on the 27th of January, Jan-Åke and myself could barely speak. We were so tired. And we went to meet with the employees in front of the Saab Museum. Peter Backstrom acted, as you can very well imagine, as the moderator that day. And we were I mean, for those of you who are not intimately involved with Swedes, you think of them as pretty cool and, you know, very controlled people like Jan-Åke. And it's true. That's the way they are. Except when you tell them that their job is good for life and that they will live long, happily ever after with Saab. Then all of a sudden they cheer and yell and cry, and they were all over the place. It was an astounding day. And I was really happy that Jan-Åke had to speak first because I was choked up. It was amazing. And really then we completely realized what we had achieved, how incredibly exciting. So next thing you know, we had 4 weeks in order to create the transaction itself. And it went extremely well. This is actually also on that very day when we were confronted with the personnel. This is, you can now mentally prepare because the Mille is coming. On the 23rd of February, we had a closing dinner in the Grand Hotel in Stockholm. And that marked the final sealing of the deal. And this is really where Jan-Åke's story picks up. You know, the weeks following, we started to build up the business again. And the contribution by Spyker has been relatively modest, we have to say. I mean, it's not like we can run that company because that's typically something that Jan-Åke and his team do. But we do bring a number of things to the table. First of all, we know about premium. We know very much about premium. AJ was kind enough to bring Spyker 112 to the event today. If you're a small manufacturer, you know every car by chassis number still, and I know where they are. That's almost scary. I wish one day I don't know because we'll make so many of them that I don't know where they are. But still today we are only at chassis number 260 or so, and I know every car where it is. And I'm very grateful you took it because most people haven't seen a Spyker in real life. But when I started that company 10 years ago, that was a struggle in its own right. But to bring something from nothing to where we are today with Spyker, it was quite a struggle. But to take Saab from where it was in shambles to where we're going to take it is an even greater challenge. But we have a great brand, we have great supporters, and we have phenomenal product lurking around the corner. So then I said to Jan-Åke when the smoke had lifted and he was starting to look like a human being again, I said, listen, there's an event that we need to do. And in December, when we were in the middle of the negotiations, I had talked to the organizers of the Mille, whom I happen to know very well because I did it for the first time when Jan-Åke got his driver's license. When I was 22, actually, I took a Lancia Aureli B20. It was 1982. I went to the Mille and I drove that for the first time, and I kept on doing it year after year after year. It is the best car event in the world, period. And I told Jan-Åke, we have to go and do this. It is good for you. You need to go, and you bring your son, but it's good for the brand, and it underlines how we appreciate and cherish the heritage of this brand. So we prepared 2 cars, and of course Jan-Åke had to borrow a car because the museum only had 1 car rally, and he found a guy who had actually driven the Mille with that particular car the year before. So he had been instructed about the Mille by this wonderful owner, Mr. Persson. First of all, Jan-Åke thought that you needed a road book in the Mille, which is really pathetic because there are so many people lining the roads that you might as well throw this very heavy book, this brick, out of the window the day that you depart, right? It's immediately you can throw it away. You don't need it. Secondly, he thought that it was a regularity run, right? A regularity run, let me explain how that works. You have a lot of mechanical stopwatches in your car, and you try to reach a certain rubber line on the road by exactly the time that is in the road book, which you, if you are a real participant, have already dumped. And you hang out of your car, and you see the front wheel just hit that line exactly at the right time, right? And the average speed you have to cover is no less than 45 kilometers an hour, 30 miles an hour, right? So you can imagine that Jan-Åke was completely geared up how he was going to win the Mille by hanging out of the window and clocking his time. So I explained to him, Jan-Åke, the Mille is won by those who have the most points, default points, points for penalties, right? You win by turning the sheet upside down, right? The guy who's absolutely at the bottom wins because he's got most points, which means he's broken more laws than God. I thought he got it, right? It wasn't that difficult to understand. So next thing you know, we're on the ramp. We're on the ramp. And I was with my 18-year-old son, who's been waiting for the Mille Miglia for 18 years, right? So he was really cranky.
This is now 25 minutes.
Yes, yes. And we're not even there. It's going to get much worse before it's going to get better. Much worse. Much worse. So I was going down the ramp like a bat out of hell. I'm a veteran. I've done this 11 times. I know that red traffic lights are there to be completely ignored. White lines on the road, you don't even look at them. Curbs, you take them at high speed, right? No problem at all. So I said to my son, I laughed and I said, we'll never see the Swedes again, right? They're gone. But I have to admit, reluctantly, that it took about a mile or two when I saw two little yellow lights in my mirror. Here was Jan-Åke. He had thrown his book away, and he was driving like mad. I mean, like mad. So he got it. And when we left Brescia, I started driving on the wrong side of the road for a while, and then I really lost him. But again, he learned very quickly, and just maybe 50 miles out of Brescia, he was back. And then he thought he was in a race with me. But at the same time, and that was really the pathetic part, he was trying to get as few points, penalty points, as possible. And that's why he won. And I explained to him, in his perception that is, and I explained to him, very low penalty points is for pussies, right? So next year when we're in the Mille Miglia, because I can assure you, he and I are going to be competing again. Next year in the Mille Miglia, you'll see him standing here, right? And he says, I won. I was 312 and Victor was 299, right? Mark my words, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. So I did it within half an hour, right? But everybody gets it. It wasn't that difficult. He really, it's so nice. It's nice. Anyway, I would like to show you something. This is important. Power when you need it, ladies and gentlemen. And the power that we need is, again, you. We need your power, not only to spread the word about Saab and that the company's fine and here to stay, but also to get everybody, including yourself, to buy new cars. It sounds in a way, too simple to be true. But the only thing that stands between us and a successful, viable, profitable Saab is selling cars. This company is so well organized, this company is such a well-oiled machine that the only thing that stands between that and being really successful is selling enough product. And that's really where the power is that we need so much right now. And in order to facilitate that, we have devised, let's say, a slight, incentive. And this incentive equals 12 and a half years of Saab, or from North America, membership fee. And this just happens to be exactly that amount, but it wasn't conceived that way. It's just a slight way for Saab to tell you, thank you for supporting us the way you have. If you buy a new Saab, you're a member today, we'll throw in $500 to facilitate the deal. Maybe that's not the decisive factor, but it's just something that is a token of our appreciation for your support when we so much needed, when you were the power, when we needed it. Thank you very much indeed.